jump right in. If folks wouldn't mind muting their microphones for a little while, you can have your camera on or not. That's your choice. Yeah, we're very excited today to have Kate DeLeo from Ennōbble. So Kate is the CEO and Chief Brand Architect with the branding firm Ennōbble. She's a pragmatist who believes that business is a conversation, not a transaction. She therefore builds brands that create real and compelling common ground with customers. Kate has been in business for over 10 years and helped build over 100 brands in over 20 sectors. And she's built a proprietary branding process that quickly and effectively build brands in only 3 to 4 weeks so that her clients can get out there and win more work. The proof of her unique approach has led her to over 95% of her clients have been successful in leveraging their brand as a path of least resistance to revenue because they're effectively bringing more prospects to the table. And I unfortunately did this in the wrong order. That's Kate, who you're going to hear from, but I should have given a little bit more housekeeping stuff first. So sorry, Kate, I'm going to keep the microphone for just 1 second longer. So what I'm going to ask everybody to do is while Kate's talking today, we'll try to put most of your questions, excuse me, most of your questions in chat. And I'll kind of be keeping an eye on that. And then once Kate's done with the majority of her presentation, we'll go through some of those questions. And feel free then to turn your microphone and or camera back on and just have it be an open discussion after her relatively short presentation. So Funders and Founders is an organization that Matt and Phil and I partnered to put together. So chances are you probably know one of the three of us or know someone who knows one of the three of us, or if you don't, that's great. We're an organization that's just really trying to help small businesses, especially often technology companies or those who invest in them, kind of during COVID. So if you haven't been to them, we have every other Thursday happy hours from 5:30 to 7 or 7:30 Central Time. If you're not on that calendar invite, we've had a little bit of problems with our calendar invites, but we're going to be getting that resolved probably by next week. But again, we do that every other Thursday. The next one of those is next Thursday evening. You can drop your email address in private chat to me, and we'll make sure you get on that list. Matt or Phil, anything else I forgot?
Yeah, see Phil jumped on there. Perfect. I would say Kate. I've loved getting to know Kate. So it feels like I've known her a lot longer than I actually have. It's been since all this Funders and Founders stuff's been happening. But to hear how she thinks through branding and marketing and really how brand affects everything you do is really makes a lot of sense. And my background was really more content marketing, SEO focused. But even thinking through on a deeper level how brand touches everything you do within marketing and sales is a big deal. So it'll be exciting to hear Kate's perspective on that. But to see her be an active member within the Funders and Founders community, and which has already become a pretty tight knit group, which is exciting, has been inspiring. So I'm was excited for Kate today.
Great. Well, with that, we also do these lunch and learns every other Wednesday, and we have a couple of exciting topics coming up. I think Diane, if I'm not mistaken on calendar, you're giving your kind of story in a couple of weeks. If you want to maybe say 30 seconds of what we'll hear 2 weeks from today, and then we'll kick off Kate's talk.
Okay, cool. First of all, I'm super stoked to hear Kate. Thank you for your help yesterday too. You're amazing. And yeah, thanks guys. I'm really excited. So I'm going to do October 28th. So mine's going to be an Ask Me Anything of how I bootstrapped my first startup from $0 to $50 million in annual revenue in 6 years. So basically I'm just going to share my story and how I did it and see. And I've had 4 other exits and 7 other companies. And so just happy to answer any questions from my 23 years of entrepreneurial experience that could be helpful.
And then we still are working on a couple of other topics, but we think we'll have one soft circled for November 11th that is about Santa for a Day, which is a Chicago-based not-for-profit that gives underprivileged kids Christmas presents. Last year, 5,000, and they're targeting giving 10,000 kids a meaningful Christmas this year. We hope that's going to be on November 11th. And then we've just started early planning of a non-dilutive funding panel. So we're going to have Alfred Jackson from Arch Grants, who spoke on our funding panel, and then a couple of other people in the SBA lending and venture debt space, because I know that especially for this community, funding sources is a really important topic. So we're going to circle back to that again yet this year in November or December still. So those are kind of some preview of coming attractions in our Lunch and Learn series. And yeah, with that, Kate, take it away. We're excited to learn the brand trifecta.
All right. Well, first of all, what I'm going to do is share my screen here. So give me just a moment. And we're going to make sure I can take care of that here. All right. So let me know, can you guys see my screen?
Yep.
Amazing. Well, welcome you guys. My name is Kate DeLeo. Graham, thank you for introducing me. I'm going to be talking to you about how to use something called the brand trifecta for revenue generation. And so before I dig into that, and I want this to be very interactive, I'll just give you kind of the brief overview of who the heck I am. I am an accidental brand strategist. So candidly, I was not going to school for marketing. I was actually pre-PhD. I was looking to complete a PhD in cultural anthropology with a focus on economic development. And the market crashed. And sure enough, I'm sitting there in college and then doing some of my graduate work. And my professor said to me, get out now. And so I did. And so what did I do? I actually dove right into some sales and marketing gigs right out of college. And it was probably one of the best things that I had ever done. I landed at an IT training company of all places, you guys, selling training over the phone to IT professionals, which is pretty much the biggest oxymoron ever. Cold calling an IT person to sell them a $2,000 class sounds like an absolute chaotic idea of a day job, but that's what I did. And what was interesting is how many of you are IT people? How many of you know that IT people do not want to be on the phone, let alone be sold to? Okay. So here I was working in this job, and it was fascinating because I was running a $1.2 million a year pipeline as the new kid on the block, and I was killing it. I was doing really well. And I had this moment where the head of sales and the head of marketing came over to me one day and they said, what are you doing? What, and I'm 24 at the time, something like that. And they're like, I said, well, to be really honest, I actually I threw out all your scripts. I didn't like them. They weren't working for me. I just got rid of everything. And I decided to write my own thing. And they said, well, whatever you're doing is working. Can we use it? And it was kind of a light bulb moment that I realized that what I had crafted was just a very, very simple message that was just, a few sentences long that I was sending out in an email. I was using when I was calling people. And it was really the brand trifecta that I now teach clients. And it was an aha moment that, wow, maybe I'm good at this and maybe I should kind of just do this. And so I actually dove into branding and marketing from there. And I worked both in the agency setting and then in Fortune 500 settings as well. And all the while, I was very much a professional side hustler for over a decade here. So up until a couple of years ago, guys, what I was doing with all of this brand work was a complete side hustle. So I was basically, up until the day that I left my corporate job, I was pulling about 80 hours a week. I was doing pretty much a full-time job running multiple brands at once for Ennōbble, and then I was working my day job. But when push came to shove, I knew that I wanted to get out, and so I did. I officially left corporate in early 2019, and that was kind of the beginning for me to decide, all right, time to make the side hustle the official hustle here. So here's just a bit of info, and I know Graham shared this. I've built over 100 brands. I geek out on this. This is all I do, day in and day out. I've worked in over 20 sectors. And I've built really this collaborative workshop program that enables me to go very deep and wide with clients. And we use something called a brand playbook that I wrote. And it's a 25-page book that enables us to kind of really get at the heart of your message and unpack not only who the heck you are and your core why and purpose, but who's your audience? What are they really caring about? What is the heart pain that we're solving for them? And in the process of unpacking that message, we're able to write every single piece of your brand in only 3 to 4 weeks. And so again, over 95% of my clients have seen an increase in prospects to the table or increase in conversions through websites, clicks to buy, whatever it might be, whether you're B2B or B2C. So that's a bit about me. I don't want to talk about me today. I want to kind of engage with you guys. So we're going to shift gears. And what I really want to talk about is the purpose of brand. And then how does this brand trifecta thing work? How can you take this away today and do something with it? Because that's what my hope is. So I always have this statement. Some of you have heard me say this in Funders and Founders. I firmly believe that brand is the path of least resistance to revenue. You know, what do I mean by that? I think at the end of the day, what we find is that many companies and entrepreneurs, we really struggle to get the prospect to convert. So, you know, whether it's clicking, filling out the form, you're in a networking setting, you're trying to get that business card right, or you're on the Zoom call and you're trying to get somebody to go, oh, we need to have a conversation. Many of us struggle with that. And the thing is that is a brand pitch issue, not a sales pitch issue. You know, how many of you feel like once you get them to the table, you're good, right? Like you have a much better ability to kind of, especially if you're an introvert, you're like, okay, Kate, if I can get them to the table, I can have this fantastic, rich conversation. It's beautiful from there. But there seems to be a gap for a lot of us of going, how in the world do I catch somebody really quickly so that I can get them to the table? That's brand. So a strong brand pitch is what's going to get somebody to the table so you can have that amazing conversation. So here's the thing. When we think about what brand is, if a brand pitch is supposed to get somebody to the table, what does a good brand look like? At the end of the day, the big word that I want you guys to take away is this word provoke. Brand is all about provocation. So we're going to look very, very detailed at that today, but each piece of your brand message, I want you to think about your brand as not like a big paragraph story. Sometimes you can see that. I want you to think of your brand kind of like a book. Each piece of your brand, whether it's from the title on the cover to the table of contents, to each chapter in the book, to the appendix, should provoke the reader or the person on the other side of that conversation to go, really, what do you mean by that? Really, I want to know more. Provoke, provoke, provoke. That's the word I want you to remember. If you want to build compelling common ground with somebody and create that authentic storytelling, you got to have a kind of a conversation with them. And here's the thing, there's no conversation with your prospect until they literally are provoked to ask why. Tell me more. What's in it for me? So I want to think about that for a second. Many of us understand that the art of marketing and sales, the art and science of it is, I guess, this idea of we've got to get our message out there and we've got to tell them how we solve their problem. And Kate, I know this already. There is a fine line that we have to walk with branding that goes from simply telling to provoking a conversation. So a question that I want you to think about today is, where in your brand message are you telling, and where do you need to do a slight pivot to provoke somebody to ask a question or to do something? So we're going to get into this today. We have a lot of time for questions, okay? So this is where this idea of the brand trifecta comes in. This is kind of what I've hinged my work on. There's a lot of components, guys, of brand that are still important for you to think about and write, that I even build with clients, like vision statement, mission statement, having a social media bio, having brand values, like, oh, there's a ton of stuff. But if I could give you the nuts and bolts of 3 things that, for the love of God, please have, it's this brand trifecta. We're going to kind of unpack what that is. And guess what? Chances are you have versions of this, and chances are walking away today, you are going to have very clear marching orders of how you could probably just refine these things and then implement, okay? So what is the brand trifecta? It has 3 components. That is a tagline, a value proposition statement, and differentiator statements. Now, for those of you that are on this call that have not ever heard of those and are not living in the world of marketing and branding, no problem. Don't even worry about it. We're going to kind of explain what these things are. This is all marketing speak. I'm not so worried about that. What I want you to take away is there's 3 statements that work together, and each piece should provoke to the next. And I'm going to give you some examples today. Your tagline, I think people kind of know what that is a little bit. It's really who you are and what you do. Now, I have seen taglines written in a lot of different ways. I've seen them like 3 words. I've seen them like very long. I've seen them very short. Typically 5 to 6 words. If your tagline is an entire sentence, it's not a tagline. It should be a phrase, okay? It's very action oriented. And it really articulates who you are or what you do. Now, I'll be honest, the best taglines I've ever seen, though, say very clearly what you do. That's probably the best one I've seen. And it's going to provoke somebody to want to know more. So, for example, my tagline is, I build brands that win more work. Some of you might be going, well, that's kind of pretentious. No, I don't know if it's pretentious. I think it's provocative, meaning I think it's rooted in truth, and it is truth based on my numbers and based on what I've done, right? So I can stand on that, but it clearly says what I do. Do you notice that? And every time I say that to somebody, that I always will get this response. Have you ever said to somebody what you do and they go, have you ever had that kind of, seen that physical reaction out of somebody before? Or they go, well, what do you mean by that? You guys, that is perfect. The moment that you can articulate what you do, AKA your tagline, and you get that kind of response, you've got them. You've provoked beautifully. That means your tagline's going the right direction. So Brand Trifecta, the first thing that you got to have for your organization is a strong tagline that provokes and that clearly says, this is what I do. What's the next thing you've got to have in the next order? You've got to have a value proposition statement. So kind of like the name implies, it really says how you add value. But let's unpack that for a second, because there can be confusion around what a value proposition should be. It should be pretty short and clear as a sentence. So meaning it's not this like 35 word run on like mini paragraph of a sentence. It should be pretty much to the point. It is a you focused statement, and it's a call to action statement. And it should clearly say how you solve somebody's problem. It's actually phrased in the best way that I've ever seen it. Most strong brands that have strong value props, it's phrased like this: do this so you get that. Have you guys ever seen that, where you're on somebody's website and it's like, partner with the premier firm that does this, join us now? They're telling you to take some form of action, and they clearly say, when you take this action, you will get said value. This is what it will solve for you. That's what we want to do, and it's going to provoke you to want to know more. Let me go back to my example again. I walk in the room, and I'm going to just pick on Graham for a second, right? So Graham comes up to me and he says, Kate, what do you do? And I say, I build brands that win more work. And he goes, what do you mean by that? And I say, well, I'm a brand strategist that helps you clarify your message and create common ground with your audience so that they want to buy from you versus the competition. I do this, so you get that. And every single time that I deliver that sentence, Graham or the other person on the other side of the conversation goes, really? Tell me more about that. Now, this is an interesting point. Right in this moment, you just told them your tagline. You told them, this is what I do. I build brands that win work. And then you told them a bit more information around that. You said, I'm a brand strategist, help you clarify your message so people want to buy from you. Okay, here's what's interesting. In this moment, most of us as entrepreneurs or as business owners would go, great, they're ready to hear about my services. They're so ready to know about my packages and my offerings, right? Time out, because here's actually what happened. And this is bizarre, but I learned this about 9 years ago and it blew my mind. In the psychology of buying, what happens is when you give the brain new information, right? I just told him a very provocative tagline and a very provocative value proposition statement. This is all like new information he's never heard before. His brain's like, what? And it's trying to make sense of it. Do you know what the brain does in that moment? It makes a comparison. It says, okay, Kate's telling me this, so I'm going to try my best to make sense of this by comparing it to something I know to make sure I'm understanding what she's saying. So what I'll often hear in response, how many of you have heard this? So are you like a marketing agency, Kate, or are you like a social media person then? They're going to ask some form of a clarifying question. And this is the moment when I then say, well, actually, I'm a little different. Let me explain how. And so I'll tell them my differentiators verbally or on my homepage of my website. So what the heck are differentiator statements? Kind of like the name implies, higher different. Now, often good differentiators are a combo of like a short little phrase that catches somebody's attention and then maybe a supporting sentence. Typically, a company has probably 4 or 5 things that make them different. And these sentences should support what you said with your tagline and your value proposition. it really should speak to why you're better. And differentiators very clearly can say what you are and what you're not. Sometimes I've seen companies, have you ever seen this before, where they have a differentiator statement that says, we're not this, we're that. In fact, one of my differentiators says, unlike many brand agencies that try to do everything and be a jack of all trades, I only do this. That's one of the key ways that I'm different. I am niched in. So your differentiators are going to provoke that person throughout this conversation to want to know more. So again, what I want you to take away is this: the brand trifecta of tagline, value proposition statement, and differentiators is layered in a very specific way in order to provoke that person to get to the point where they want to understand, well, how do you do it? And until they hear, this is what I do, tagline, this is how I solve your problem, value proposition statement, and this is how I'm different than the competition, differentiators, believe it or not, they're not ready yet to click on the button to learn about your products and services, to have that uncovering conversation. So here's the thing, the outcome of the brand trifecta are conversations that convert pretty much every single time. It is the thing that gets the person to go, that's interesting, I want to have a conversation with you. I want to fill out that form. I want to talk to Graham. So here's what I want to kind of do. I want to talk about, what do you do with this? So you're going, Kate, great, I have a tagline. I've got a value proposition statement. I've got differentiator statements. I want you to actually go back. I want you to really take a look at what you have written. Are the sentences that you have very clearly about provoking a conversation, or are they telling? Does it ask for engagement, or does it tell? Second thing I want you to think about is, are you focused on talking about the features and benefits of your product or service? Or are you focused on really hitting at the heart pain of what somebody needs? Meaning, we could talk, this is very common because we're so close to what we do. We can talk all day long about, my app does this thing and this thing, and oh my God, and when you click this button, it does this whole thing, and then we've got this whole plan to do this, and hold on a second. When you start the conversation, whether it's on the homepage of your website, whether it is in a pitch deck, whether it is, in the actual physical conversation with somebody, are you pulling up a level and moving away from features and benefits for a second to talk about, I understand specifically the heart pain that you're dealing with, and I can articulate that to say, this is who I am and what I do. This is how I solve that problem. By the way, this is how I'm different. Can you do that? If not, I want you to go back and refine these pieces to hit at the heart pain and not surface level feature and benefit, and to provoke a conversation versus tell. When you do that, then is the fun part. And you're going, well, where the hell do I put this stuff? I kind of alluded to this, but it's got to be on your website, like on the homepage. Like, it's got to be on the homepage of your website. This can't be buried in the about page or the services page. It should be in your social media bios for every single, not only your company page, your personal bio. It should be across all platforms that you have. Digital marketing and advertising. If you're running ads, if you're doing SEO, is it aligning with that? Are they using the same keywords? Pitch decks. This is a huge one. I work with tons of clients that are going for their next round of funding, and we build their brand, and I'm going, great. Now you've got to implement it across your pitch deck to clearly articulate right up front this specific brand trifecta, so that that potential investor is engaged and understands how and why they may want to get involved. And then printed collateral, one pagers, you can put it in your personal like intro bio if you have people making intros for you, all across the board. So all that being said, this is the brand trifecta. Now you're going, that didn't tell me much, but it did. What I want to do is open this up for some dialogue. I'm going to just leave my contact info here, and I know Graham's going to send this out too, and I think he put it in the chat, but here's the thing, coming through today, I would love to offer you guys a free 30-minute brand consult for anybody that's going, ooh, I don't know how I feel about my brand right now. Please contact me, just shoot me an email, and I'd love to help you out. and just understand if there's a couple tips and tricks I can give you. But what I'm going to do right now is, on this note of Brand Trifecta, and I know that was down and dirty, that was the fastest 25 minutes I've ever done. I'm going to open it up for conversation today. And so I'm going to actually pitch it back to Graham here in just a moment and ask him to see if we've had some questions from the audience.
Believe it or not, there have not been a lot, other than can you share the slide deck? But I'm sure that I'm sure that folks have tons of questions. It looks like Diane is raising her hand, so yeah, feel free to turn microphones and cameras on. And yeah, what questions do people have for Kate?
Hey, Kate, thanks so much. I have a question, and that was awesome. I really want your slide deck. So, okay, my question is, and things like this kind of came up actually in the last Funders and Happy Hour. So as we're pitching, or giving our tagline or what we do, I feel like people, me included, tend to kind of like try to change it up in case other people, like people have heard it before. And how do you feel about that? Like, do you keep on saying the same tagline when you're in front of the same people, or do you say it in different ways? I hope that made sense.
When I feel this, I actually love that question. I'm Duncan. I just joined. I'm a former founder of a blockchain startup. We raised about $1 million, and the technology was a little bit too early. But to your question, investors hate when someone is reading a script. And I can usually tell, I do some angel investing. I can usually tell someone's, stood in front of the mirror and practice and practice and practice and practice, so much so that they don't even know really what they're saying. So I don't really have an exact formula or answer, but the closer it is to a script, the less people actually will feel connected or as passionate about it as you are. So by all means, don't wing it. But, there is always room for improv or getting to know the audience, or kind of just different points that you raise, different points. Like if you're talking to an insurance company, that's going to be a different conversation than a bank with a couple, just picking two random customers. So it's a combination of like know your audience, as well as keep it fresh so you don't sound monotone or like you're reading a script.
Yeah, let me tag on to that. So this is a really interesting question, and I appreciate the comments and questions here. So high level, I think it's really important to remember that first of all, being candid is really great. I think, I always say in the beginning with these funders and founders calls, for example, because here you are, you're going through like all these rooms, right? And sometimes you get paired with the same people that have heard your shtick over and over and over again. And your tendency would be to go, oh God, I don't want to repeat myself. Here's what I'm going to tell you. Don't deviate, but just have fun, okay? Be you. So I will always say at the beginning, like, I know that a few of you have heard this, and I say this in every group. Here's what I'm going to tell you. So I kind of like will preface it on the front end and be like, okay, here's my message. And I'm totally okay owning the fact that this is what I say every single time. And it allows the people in the room that maybe have heard it to kind of be like, she owns it. She knows that she says this. Cool. But what I don't want you to do is try and reinvent the wheel every single time, because what happens is you create a lot of confusion in your brain over your message. And you might feel, Diane, like I'm constantly then hustling or trying to figure out on the fly what to say and how to say this authentically. There is a huge difference between memorizing or owning a simple tagline, a simple value proposition statement, and 3 or 4 just big bulleted phrases for your differentiators than trying to memorize a 50-second pitch. Huge difference. I want you to think about, if I could really write these sentences, gosh, that's easy for me to rattle off and actually just kind of talk around, versus it feeling like you're having to memorize what we traditionally were taught even 10 years ago, the 30-second elevator pitch. That doesn't work anymore. Investors don't want to hear that. The other piece I want to point out is, once you nail down your tagline, your value prop, and your differentiators, here's the cool part. Now you have the working structure to create variations of that. There's a few ways that you can create pitches with that, meaning I have what's called the conversation pitch, which I totally gave an example of when Graham and I are having like a back and forth. I have what's called a story pitch, which is where it's like written in a paragraph form. Let's say like what Graham read, or let's say you're like saying, hey, Bob, next time you intro me, this is what you can send. And then you have, it's called like a deck pitch. Hi, I do branding.
Slip.
It's great.
You're just keeping us on our toes, right, Kate?
Sweet Jesus.
Kate, share that with me offline.
Yeah. Well, there you go. Funders and founders, welcome everybody. So no, with the deck pitch though, here's what's fantastic about that. Same exact sentences, but again, you're ordering it then on the slides that they need to be on the front end of your of your deck. So then that way, like the rest of that information around the financials makes a lot of logical sense. Same sentences used just slightly different ways. Diane, does that help clarify? Okay.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Kate.
So Kate, we had a question come in from
Okay.
Eric. Can you describe your brand IP due diligence process, which as an investor, I think is a really interesting thing to think about. And I'm not sure that we as investors think about it much at all, or certainly as much as we should. So yeah, I mean, I guess I want to tag onto that question and say that, yeah, that's a great question.
Yeah. Hey, Graham, if I can also clarify, because I was very obviously brief, but even just like, you know, like right now I'm doing some branding and I probably in a week came up with 100 different names. I start with the tagline, then come up with the name, you know, and I kind of have my own process for looking at URLs, what exists, trademarking and so forth. But I'm like, and it's really like the first pass. So I don't take 10 things to an attorney. I take maybe 2 or 3. So I'm curious kind of what your quick personal due diligence would be on a potential brand and you know, its defensibility and its ease of URL and so forth.
Yeah. So this is a really huge question, and I'll try and, for the sake, because I know there's a bunch of other questions popping up. I saw David Culver raise his hand, so David will get to you in a minute, and a few others to the chat. But okay, first and foremost, I'm not an attorney. We'll just put that out there. So secondly, I use great attorneys. So what I learned being a website developer as well for part of my career is URL, and having a clear URL that matches your company name is very important. So Eric, you kind of referenced this. If my company name is Ennōbble, I want to get an URL and name that match. So it's Ennōbble.com ideally versus Ennōbblebusiness.net. You know, it's a very different thing because you want it to be easy to recall, easy to be able to type in, and clearly articulates the name of your organization. When it comes to trademarking or IP protection in any way, shape, or form, my process is always this. When I'm writing with a client, I'm very clear about the fact that, first of all, you could have a tagline for your company and not necessarily feel like you have to go and get that thing trademarked. Okay, because in the trademarking process, again, I'm not an attorney, there's a whole set of parameters that go along with whether and how you can get something trademarked, including your company name, your logo, your taglines. That is a whole other thing. If in doubt though, you say to me, Kate, I love this tagline, but I want to make sure out of due diligence that we're not stepping on toes. What I actually recommend to every client is that they do something with an attorney either on their own or on their own, and it's called a knockout search. Most attorneys trademark attorneys will be able to do this for potentially just a few $100s. Go into that database for you, look up core keywords and phrasing of the way that you have your tagline, your company name, whatever it is, and be able to tell you if there's any potential infringement. What is your potential risk of being sued or having to have any sort of litigation and whatever? So your best bet, you guys, when it comes to branding is to always do what's called a knockout search. That way, in the event that you need to slightly adjust it, you can. Where I have seen and heard from my attorney more often than most versus taglines being an issue is the company name itself. That's primarily where I've seen 90% of where people have gotten into trouble. That isn't to say you can just get away with having any tagline. If you go and make the tagline Zoom or whatever it is like Mazda, I mean, you're gonna probably have an issue. But chances are, if you're a startup, start with working with an attorney to make sure you've at least got your bases covered with your company name, your logo as well, and your mark. And then you can also ask at the same time if needed to have them check for defensibility against your primary tagline. Does that clarify, Eric? Okay.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so I know we have to click because we got a lot of questions. David, you had raised your hand, and then I've got to get to a few in the chat, but David, go ahead.
Sure. I was going to we deal with as Venture Shot, we deal with a ton of different entrepreneurs and investors, right? So I was going to kind of support you on that, Kate. Basically, you have to get your tagline or your vision statement or whatever you're going to put out there the right every single time, right? And we don't struggle with that. Some of our entrepreneurs struggle with that consistently because they're used to saying it and they want to switch it up. I will guarantee you that Elon Musk or Tesla at some point in time during every single public thing he's going to say that's more than 10 seconds long is going to say Tesla's mission is to accelerate the adoption of sustainable energy. And he's going to say it, and he's going to say it again and say it every time. And he just does it as a matter of fact. He can switch it up and he can put different things ahead of that or before that. But you have to feel comfortable assuming that you've created a good enough tagline and or a good enough vision statement, whatever you're using, to be able to say that and the 3 or 4 or 5 supporting bullet points underneath that every single time you're having that conversation, because every single investor you're going to want to talk to or present to, they're going to need to hear that for the first time or the second time.
Yeah. I think it's another great point too on that is how memorable do you want to be? Are people going to remember your story if you change it up every single time? The best brands in the world are memorable. Be bold enough to be memorable. And if you have that moment of fear with your brand message, then that just means revisit the message. Seriously, what is it about that that's causing you a gut check? If you're not 100% certain with what your tagline is, and that's why you're trying to switch it up, go back and write a tagline that you freaking love and that you own 100% of the time and could say at a drop of a hat.
So let me jump in real quick on that, because I think that's a perfect point to where I talk to people about this all the time. Every company you talk to thinks they have the best customer service ever. Everyone thinks they have the best product ever. Everyone thinks that they are the best. And so many times if you say generic things that aren't really unique or special, they're meaningless. And same with when it comes to like logos. Remember, everyone's like, they take the ABC and they're like, oh, I'm just going to use my logo is going to be our abbreviation or whatever. That's not memorable. Everyone has those things. So I'm a big, big fan of being different. And many times people ask me like, well, why do you do this? Why do you do that? I said, you know how many conversations get started with the fact that you do something different than someone else? And that is a perfect way to get in a conversation. So I'm a huge, huge believer in just being slightly different when you're creating your brand so that your messaging is not like everyone else. Absolutely.
I love it. Hey, by the way, I'm looking at the chat here, guys. And yes, I will share the slide deck. So what I'll do, Graham, after today, I'll email this out to Graham so that he can forward it along to everybody. Okay, so stay tuned for that. You'll get an email. And Graham, you can also send them my contact information in there as well, in case that's easier for you guys to connect with me if you have questions. Go ahead.
Can I add one more thing to that question? If you look at Techstars or YC, how they present, the founders that go through that program have to present their pitch, countless times, probably, a couple hundred times to many, many, many different investors. And on demo day, they've probably been practicing that pitch for 2 weeks straight. My point being, if you watch them, it doesn't seem like they're reading a script. It sounds like it's new, fresh, and you can see the passion in their voice and in their eyes. And when you match that with a really great slide deck, a presentation and a deck can be the most powerful instrument you have, especially early on, much more powerful than a demo often is, when the investor can see how driven you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I have another question here from Amanda that I want to make sure I'm getting to, and then you guys continue to jump in here audibly or through the message thread in the chat. Amanda asked, Kate, I'm wondering how you handle potential customers that want to cut corners and do it themselves. Yes, okay, so here's the deal. I do get on calls, and of course I'll always hear from any entrepreneur who, I am an entrepreneur as well, who has bootstrapped my entire company. So let me be very clear. I have bootstrapped everything, you guys. I love bootstrappers. Please don't get me wrong. But in the moment that you start asking yourself, well, I'm just going to do it myself because it's a budget issue. I just want to caution if they're trying to cut corners because it's from a budget standpoint. There's 2 ways of cutting corners in the world of brand. Number one, you're cutting corners because you think you've got all the answers and you think you can adjust your message. And the candid response that I've had in that scenario on the call with them is to just ask them really and truly kindly, not being a jerk about it, just going, how is that going for you? And then they go very quiet and they go, well, it's not really working. And I say, okay, so here's your choices, right? You can take it back to the table. You can try that again on your own. And chances are you can come up with another iteration. Now, today we're having the call because there was something that made you want to talk about how I could maybe help you in this area. And if that's the case, this is what it could look like. We don't cut the corners in the way that I do this, because what I know to be true is you've got your brand inside of your brain, but my expertise is pulling that out. My job is helping you take it from the 35 sentences in your mind to the 2, 3, or 4 sentences that are going to be crisp, clean, to the point, and immediately articulate who you are, how you solve somebody's problem, and why you're different. And you know what? If that's not of value to you, that's okay. I fully let them go. It's their choice. Some people will cut corners, but that may have stopped them dead in their tracks to go, crap, what I'm doing is not working. The second thing, though, is if they're trying to cut corners from a budget standpoint, I respect anybody that is trying to bootstrap and has cash flow as their top priority. So the one thing that I always do is make sure that they understand it could be that this is a timing thing. It could be that you know that you have the priority right now to get your message done, but it honestly could be that you've got to go back to the table and figure out how to swing that from a budget standpoint. And I totally respect that and I understand that. So I hope that answers the question. I think Amanda just clarified. She says, we did everything you spoke about to our site. However, we have clients who are trying to cut corners. Amanda, are you asking specifically, are people wanting to shortcut your package and like pare down what you're offering? Is that what you're specifically saying? Like, well, we only want this and we only want that. If that's the case, and maybe I'm hitting at this, it's more of a sales positioning question where I would just say, the package is the package. We believe that the way that we do this process is for a reason, and we've built this for a reason to get the best outcome. So I don't shortcut my packages, for example.
Yeah. Hi, Kate. It's Amanda. Sorry.
Yeah.
So I probably should have added that we actually did. Where were you 3 months ago? First of all, I hired a whole team to do exactly what you went over on this call. But what I was kind of getting at, and I'm sure other entrepreneurs probably face something similar, but we kind of did everything that you spoke about, and we really tried to clarify our message and our value prop and who we are and what we do and everything else. And what I find sometimes is, we've got kind of larger clients, and what I'm finding is sometimes they're looking to hire someone to do what we do, which is quite complex, for like a couple of $1,000s. And then when we talk through the strategy and like how we approach getting to the answers that they need, probably similar to you, they want to kind of undertake, go about this undertaking themselves. And so I suppose like my question really is like, since we've been so clear on the website and so clear on the messaging, do you have any suggestions for people who are kind of going through the motions, and then once we get to, the budget and we're pretty sure that they can afford it, but they just try to like kind of cut corners with it?
Yeah. So, okay. So here's what I'm going to say to you guys, and I'm going to preface this. That is a fantastic prospecting question. And I'm going to answer this in context of brand. So you've done the work of clarifying your tagline, your value prop, your message, you got it out there, you're trying to reach that audience. Potential gap, and I'm not saying this is the gap, but from what I'm hearing, it may be that the people that are getting on the phone call are not your right target audience for you in the first place. Literally meaning that like if they do not have the budget and you're sniffing that before you even get them on the call, I wouldn't even take the call. So one of the things that I do through the process is really clarify, what am I listening for as symptoms when I'm prospecting? Because with brand, and again, Amanda, hear me on this, because you may be doing a great job of this, so I'm kind of shooting in the dark here, so help me. But if you have not clearly defined not only company size, but attributes of what you're listening for from the prospect to even know, do I even want to have a conversation? It's very possible that you're taking a number of prospects that just are not actually good qualified candidates for you. So part of that branding process is being able to fully say with confidence, we have no desire to eat the elephant in the marketplace. We know that everybody could use what we offer, but we don't care about everybody. We only care about doing a great job for these specific people who are actually going to resonate with our message, who actually have the budget, who will actually see value in what we offer. And you're fully okay diving in and niching into that area. I could do what I do for mid-sized companies, for large organizations, but I have serious pushback sometimes from companies of different sizes. Whereas if I say to even a startup, you know, this is my price and this is what I do and this is how I deliver it, never once have they tried to undercut the price from me. Now, I'm not saying that that's neither right nor wrong, and maybe you are doing that differently. So again, I'm not trying to judge because I'm going off of a limited amount of information right now and what you're sharing, but it may be seriously that the people that are getting on the call are not the right candidate versus it being them not seeing value in what you're doing. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
We had another question come into the chat that I thought was really good. At what stage should startups work on branding? Pre-seed or post-seed or some other stage, I guess you could suggest? The person who asked the question's understanding has been that in the early stages, the most important thing is getting an MVP made and completed. And then after that, one of the next most important things is brand. But what would you recommend on when it's appropriate for a startup to focus on their branding, Kate?
Always? No, I'm kidding. No, I'm not going to say that. Okay. So here's the thing. I would say the big thing that, to your point, so Hashmat, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. Typically it's, you know, in the early stages, you need to have the MVP made and then you should be working on branding. Okay. I'm going to be really candid with you. The sooner you can do branding, the better. So companies that do a really good job of getting through their funding rounds have actually done the work of doing branding in that angel pre-seed area. Seriously, if you're in bootstrap mode and you can get your message down, for the love of God, get it down. Because I will tell you, that is the secret to getting buy-in, more than the product itself. What investors understand and what companies understand is that you could be at a variety of phases with your product or service in terms of delivering that to the marketplace. What they need is a clear message that articulates what's going on and why in the world they should get involved. Do they believe what you yourself believe? And here's the thing, your MVP is only going to get you part of the way in that. Showing them the object is not going to help them fully understand why should I believe this. You've got to leave with the message so that they're going, I want to see it. Oh, I want to see that. So the sooner you can get that message down, the better. That being said, if you are in a position where you've got the MVP done, or I have companies that have come to me and they're going through Series A or further on down the road, but you have pivoted, you've adjusted. Anytime there's a pivot point, whether it is adjustment in your product or service, going after a new segment in the marketplace, whatever that might be, great. Go through the rebrand process. And it's not so much that you need to overhaul. I want you to remember, sometimes it's just like a quarter turn of that message that can do everything for you to really hit the mark. I hope that answers your question.
Anybody else have questions? I think we've gotten to most or everything in the chat.
So Frank just threw one in. Frank, yep, if you're in transit and you want to connect, go for it. Feel free to connect with me directly here, Frank, and I can also reach out to you. Go ahead. Somebody had a comment. My apologies.
Oh, no, that's okay, Kate. I just wanted to add that, you know, don't be afraid to take risk and do things differently, because when we first did our pitch deck, we sort of did exactly what we were told to do and the slides that we were required to do and this and that. And it was okay. It was fine. I mean, but when we completely changed gears and decided to tell the big why, like why we do what we do, and start with a story. And our pitch deck is so different. I mean, it has some of those required slides, if you will, but the way we start and finish our pitch deck is radically different than anyone else. It gets people hooked. And even if it's not the right investor, or they don't even do healthcare, they connect us to other people because they always remember our story. So I can't say enough good things about branding and story. And we thought about branding from day one. So
yeah, I know we've got about 6 minutes left here, and I want to make sure if anybody else has like a big, bold question, like I really want to understand this, to feel free to pop in here. And, you know, for anybody that did ask a question, if for some reason in my attempt to try and be timely, missed the mark or didn't understand correctly, definitely shoot me an email, please, because I'd love to talk with you in case that you're like, no, Kate, you're not understanding. So hope you hear that as well. I'd love to chat with each and every one of you, of course. But who else has a final question?
I have a question.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much for the great presentation. The product that I'm working on is an edtech startup. And the initial offering that we have specifically focused on universities and colleges. And we kind of pivoted and we started focusing on nonprofits. And the kind of the product offering has expanded over the last couple of years. And especially after COVID-19, we are getting some great traction in this space. But given it's a virtual platform now that we have so many segments that we can go after, but the initial name of the company doesn't convey the whole message that we are trying to offer now. So what would you tell a startup which is pivoting very rapidly because of the environment, and we are getting some traction in this space and we wanted to focus on this area? Do you think it would be a good time for us to have that branding pivot as well? What are your suggestions on that?
You know what, this is such a great question. I'm hearing this a lot right now. If you in your company during COVID have experienced that slight pivot where you're going, whoa, now we're getting traction over here and we weren't expecting that, or oh my gosh, you know what, the latest piece of the innovation that we're doing is really attracting this whole other group, right? Yeah, that's actually a really good time to think about your branding and pull your team together and understand, can we refine our brand trifecta? Can we get this nailed down? And to your point, Venki, if you also find that for some reason the name of the company itself is also not fully articulating the full value that you bring, you may want to think about a rename. There's nothing wrong with that. It may serve you quite well to do that sooner on in the process. Then all of a sudden you're going through all of these phases, and 3 years down the road, you have brand recognition in one segment of the market. Now you have to fully reinvent. The sooner you're able to do that, I would say the better. Again, make sure though on naming and things like that, please probably work with an attorney if you can to do the knockout search to make sure that you're covered. Does that help?
Yes, Kate,
Okay.
Definitely, because one other suggestion that I recently heard is, hey, since you are trying to focus on a different market segment, maybe you can have the overall brand as one, but these are different products inside under that big umbrella. So that is one thing.
Also very common. If you find in the process of innovation due to what's going on that you are going, okay, we've had a product here that serves one market, and our option is to either pivot that product or create a secondary product that's similar yet different and niched for a different group over here. Your option is take the single brand, do the pivot of the message, and that's it. Your second option, create a brand for this product, create a brand for that product, and create an overarching message, okay? So you could think of your products as kind of like sister brands, and then above that, you have an overarching company brand that succumbs whether you decide to invent 50 different products in the future. The choice is yours, depending on how unique they are and the value that each of those products really brings. And that's a conversation that any brand strategist could have with you, or maybe you and your internal team can have with each other.
Absolutely, makes sense. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
I know we've got just a couple of minutes left here. I want to thank you, Kate. I think that, and we've certainly had a lot of great comments in the chat as well, which I'm sure you've been reading, but I want to thank you for taking your time. At Funders and Founders, our goal is really about community, and we really appreciate your give back to our community here and sharing this message with everybody today. So I've put Kate's contact information in the chat multiple times. I'll do that one more time right now, just as we get ready to wrap up. So feel free to reach out to Kate. We are working on recording this, and we'll be publishing this and our 2 prior sessions pretty soon. So
can you delete my Freudian slip, by the way? Can you delete that out of the recording? Because that would be really nice.
We may have to
no.
we may have to get the video editor out for that part. So thanks everybody for attending. Reminder that our next event will be our every other Thursday happy hour. Whether it's on your calendar or not, use the link from the last calendar invite from when you came, but that'll be next Thursday from 5:30 to 7 or 7:30 Central Time. So, and by the way, if folks want to stick around, Kate, I don't know if you have more
I can
time.
stick around for
I
like 5-10
unfortunately
minutes.
actually
Yeah.
need to run, but if folks want to stick around, feel free to stay on here as long as Kate or other folks have questions. So.
Thank you guys. I'm really honored and I appreciate you. And I hope I can actually connect with each one of you individually, whether it's separately or through funders and founders. So thank you. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Kate. That was awesome.
Thank you guys.
Oh, Diane has one great last quick question to end on, in fact. If you have just one piece of advice for a first-time or new entrepreneur, what would it be?
Make sure your message provokes. Provoke, provoke, provoke every step of the way. That's what creates the conversation.
Awesome. Well, we'll be right back here. Oh, there's my niece in the background, but we'll be right back here in 2 weeks with Diane telling her story, and we're looking forward to that. Thanks in advance, Diane.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to it. Thanks, Kate.
Thank you. I'll stick around for a few more minutes if anybody has questions.